I, Anuja Palkar, Assistant Professor from School of Media and Journalism, welcome you all wholeheartedly on behalf of Dr. Vishwanath Karat, MIT World Peace University, Pune, to the third edition of Indcon, a revolutionary online conference between industry and academia to drive research and development policy reforms in India. This 3 days virtual conference will have different sessions aligned with the theme of this year, which is building stronger research and development ecosystem, enabling Saksham Bharat Abhiyan, which will also witness some of the industry specialists sharing their expertise and enlightening all of us. I now request my technical team to please relay the video of the theme of the event.
Becoming a global leader is a noble dream. What is our strength as India? It is knowledge. The strength of a nation in the digital age we find ourselves in is governed solely by its research and development index. The speed by which technology is accelerating has been unmatched since the dawn of humanity. India boasts of the largest manpower pool under the age of 30 in the world. Though we have potentially a gold mine of researchers with us, we barely produce any research. We have to import technology from nations like China. Our universities and our industry do not seem to share the deep connection that they do in countries like the US or China. That is why the IMC's Knowledge Committee, in association with MIT World Peace University, are hosting Indcon, a revolutionary online conference between industry and academia. The way for India to become a global leader lies in its repository of knowledge. Indcon is the way to do so.
Thank you very much. Indcon 2020-21 is organized by IMC Chamber of Commerce and Industry under the leadership of Shri Rajiv Poddar and Knowledge Committee Chairman Shri Rahul V. Karar. I gladly welcome you all to this third conclave of the series focusing on Bengaluru and Chennai regions. As we go ahead, let me briefly introduce you to CIAP, that is Center for Industry Academia Partnership, which was started with the intention to build collaboration with industry and academia to encourage the maximum potential and impact outcomes. This step is taken in the direction to develop innovative solutions through process-driven approach. It is indeed my deep honor and privilege to introduce Mr. Praveen Patel, the CEO of the Center for Industry Academia Partnership, who has been a pioneer in developing it and taking this initiative ahead by bringing a significant change in the university. After having a very successful deliberation in the first session of the day, we are now heading towards the second session of the day. That is, will the NEP 2020 be helpful in promoting research and development culture in India? I now request my technical team to please relay the session video.
According to WIPO, China made as many as 13 million patent applications, while India made a mere 45,000, of which over 70% were by non-resident Indians. One of the goals of NRF is to recognize outstanding research and progress achieved via NRF funding or mentoring across subjects. The NEP lays emphasis on R&D through startup incubation centers, technology development centers, centers in frontier areas of research, greater industry academic linkages, and interdisciplinary research including humanities and social science research.
Thank you very much. Today, we are deeply honored to have very esteemed members on our digital dais. Dr. P.G.Bapu, Director, Madras Institute of Development Studies, Dr. Shreepad Karmalkar, Head, Teaching Learning Center, IIT Madras, Dr. Anand Joshi, Vice Chancellor, CMR University, and Dr. Milind Pande as the moderator, who is Pro Vice Chancellor of MIT World Peace University. But before going ahead, I would request all the participants to post their questions in the Q&A section or the chat box as the session progresses. I would now request Dr. Milind Pande to kindly take over the session. Over to you, sir.
Thank you. Am I audible?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. It's a great honor for all of us at IMC, MIT, WPU, and the viewers, the participants across the country. I extend a hearty welcome to all of you for this very, very important session. My first point on this is the NEP 2020, that is basically aims at making India a global knowledge superpower. That is what the basic understanding. When I met Honorable Dr. Kasturi sir at NAC Bengaluru, we had a long discussion with him. And I remember categorically when the Prime Minister of India said the IT plus IT is equal to IT, that he was meant that information technology plus Indian talent is equal to India tomorrow. To build up the India tomorrow, we have to have the strengthening of R&D. So whether this NEP, R&D, the skill development, whether this will be making a future ready India. The multidisciplinary education and research universities is popularly called as MERUs, at par with IITs, IIMs to be set up at the models of best multidisciplinary education of the global standards. My friends, the NRF will be the apex body for fostering a strong research culture and building a research capacity across education. I remember the Peter Drucker said, he said the best way to predict the future is to create it, and how we can create the future. That is important. As rightly said in the video that we spend, the India spends only 4.6% of its total GDP on education. We are focusing, whenever we said, I said IT plus IT, I remember Dr. APJ Abdul Kalam Sahab also said, he said the 3 types of connectivities are required for uplifting the Indian rural education. He was focusing on the research and development, village as a lab. He said the 3 types of connectivities, what are those connectivities? The physical connectivity, knowledge connectivity, and the electronic connectivity. The digital India, 268,000 villages got connected through NOFN, National Optic Fiber Network. We are into the digital transformation. The India is taking a leap. But are we ready with the infrastructure? If we would like to change India tomorrow, when we said the India tomorrow, I mean, this is the point of discussion, the NEP. Again, I would like to pointing out that NRF aim is to catalyze and energize the research and innovation across all academic disciplines, particularly at the university. And the universalization of the mind is the university, and university has to play a very, very important. We want our students with the innovation in head, compassion in heart, and passion in belly. That how that bring innovation in head is a challenging, and whether this NEP will focusing on this. The various research gaps in the arts and humanities, along with the innovations in the sciences, these are the research and development is not only with the engineering, technology, and science. We need to understand the kitchen science also, the environment, energy, materials, so many dimensions. When we say R&D, it's not related with the education, agriculture, health. It is beyond this. So how we can take it up? I was going through the honorable panelist biodatas, their CVs. I mean, it's a great panel. The combined total experience of this panel is close to 100 years. That much of experience is on the plate. So I request all my honorable panelists to speak their mind about the NEP, about their experiences. In the first discussion point, I request every one of you to please speak about 5-7 minutes about yourself and your views about the NEP, and then we'll roll out the questions. So let me start with Honorable Dr. Anand Joshi, sir. Sir, over to you, please.
Thank you, sir. I'm audible?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Sir, thanks once again for the invitation, and also respectful greetings to you and also my co-panelist, Dr. Babu and Dr. Karmalkar, and also all other senior and junior leadership team of MIT World Peace University. And since the emphasis here is on policy, then obviously I would like to take you back to the policy evolution with reference to the Indian higher education, and also which led to the current NEP of 2020. So it all started with the right perspective of 1986 National Education Policy, and also its program of action in 1992, wherein the ecosystem of education integrating with R&D culture, even though it was emphasized, but still the very purpose of 1986 NEP and also the program of action of 1992 is to improve the GER, gross enrollment ratio, to increase the number of institutions, encourage the private equity in higher education, and also formation of the regulatory bodies of professional education like AICTE, NCT, IGNO, and various regulatory body to put a formal structure in higher education system in the country. That was the whole idea about it. Even though research was a small component, but emphasis of the government of India and also the respective state government was to inculcate the growth of higher education in the country. It all started with 1986. Then later on, last 20 years, 2000 onwards, then came the stability of the number of institutions and the quality in the formation of NAC and NBA and various quality initiatives, wherein it was, in fact, the emphasis shifted from the formation of an institution, it was the physical assets, and in the process of quality, then came the academic assets. The emphasis on academic infrastructure like library, laboratory, the quality of the teachers, quality of the students. I think the emphasis was on the academic assets of the institution. And then last few years, last 4 or 5 years or so, then came, it is the ranking. The NIRF, the world ranking of QS and Times ranking and regional Asian rankings, and currently the NEP that we are talking about it. I think the Indian higher education has its history of gradually overtaking, stabilizing the higher education system, qualitative improvement, and now it is from physical assets to academic assets. Now it is intellectual assets. So now the NEP 2020 is talking about intellectual assets, the quality of the leadership, the quality of the faculty. It is non-quantifiable parameters we are talking about in NEP, non-quantifiable parameters. So that's why I use the word non-quantifiable parameters is in terms of it is faculty-centric. The whole institution, higher education system is going to be faculty-centric, people-centric, particularly with emphasis on academic research with Scopus Index, not just conference presentations or some mediocre publications or paid publications or whatsoever. The focus is on research income. The focus is on reputation of research surveys and research impact and consulting research. These are the broad areas on which the NIRF, the world rankings, and so on. I'm not talking about the paid ranking list that we have in India, sorry to say it. So with having said it, so we are going to focus on more of research, less of academics, because ultimately the research is the dissemination of knowledge. Academics is just a formation of a product in the form of a formal degrees or otherwise. So that's the understood. And last, in a concluding sentence, I'd like to say, use it well. In 2020, I think we should appreciate to the fact that it is rightly focusing on research as a part of institutional performance insights. It is institutional performance insight. Earlier, we only used to talk about building the land or lawn or gate or and physical traits or academic traits. Today, we are talking about performance insights in the form of visible research output in educational institutions. I think I have made my point with reference to the introduction of the topic, sir.
Thank you, sir. Very well pointed out. I would like to request Honorable Babu, sir. Sir, if you please share your mind on this.
Yeah, let me start. Thank you all for inviting me to be on this panel. Happy to be here. When I looked at this entire National Education Policy 2020, a few things which kind of strike me. One is that the basic motive, particularly with the higher education system, is to get rid of the rigid subject separation. That's what I think they are aiming at. And the second thing is certain biases or certain perceptions of inferiority about like vocational education systems and so on and so forth that they want to address. And also the focus on internationalizing the Indian education system, allowing the top foreign universities to set shop here, as well as allowing us also to go outside of India. And overall, the culture the institutional culture, they seem to be kind of nudging us now towards big universities, multidisciplinary universities, away from these kind of standalone institutes focusing on a single subject like economics and so on and so forth, or law and things like that. Instead, I think they are pushing us more towards bigger multidisciplinary universities, which would also probably invest and teach undergraduate programs. So that's the kind of a thing like the policy seems to aim at. Now, when I think of this big research clusters and so on and so forth, this entire idea of moving us out of one kind of a structure to the other, I see that like what we have is somewhat closer to the German system. In the German system, like you had these kind of standalone institutes, polytechnics, and you have, of course, different gymnasiums at the school level, and for highly qualified and ambitious students who perform very well, and others who go to a different kind of schools and so on and so forth. And in the same way, even after PhD, like even supposing I'm registered for a PhD in a German university, if I don't get magna cum laude, so then I cannot get a job in a top research university. Instead, I should look for jobs in polytechnics and so on and so forth. It's somewhat a different kind of a system. We seem to have kind of adopted that, so when after independence, like the way we have grown, so we have had institutes specializing in mathematics, in physical sciences, chemical sciences, economics, and so on and so forth. That's the way we have gone, right? It's somewhat German system, except for one crucial difference. In German culture, it doesn't matter like what you are. I've had colleagues who are very proud of saying that their father was a potter and so on and so forth. And there it is a skill which is important. It's not so much your money and your wealth and so on and so forth. Whatever the skills be, that's what is valued. Whereas Indian society, like you can't exactly say the same thing. Like we do have this kind of divisions in our mind, hierarchies and so on and so forth across the subjects. Now that I am in Chennai, I know like how this southern society looks at social sciences and humanities and so on and so forth, vis-a-vis either Eastern or India or Delhi. There's a wide difference in terms of perceptions, in terms of our hierarchy, which we have in our minds about different subjects and so on and so forth. So now, like I see this particular policy is pushing us towards multidisciplinary universities, bigger organizations with tens and thousands of students, different and also undergraduate education, emphasis on also on undergraduate education, somewhat like an American system with big universities with undergraduate programs, which has tens and thousands of students. The mainstay there in those universities are the undergraduate programs. The graduate schools are a lot more specialized and so on and so forth. Whereas in our university, okay, so here again, like when I see this, uh, I can understand why they are pushing us here, and also why they want to get rid of subject boundaries, this rigid subject separation, and allow the students to kind of sample wide variety of undergraduate courses before they decide on one or the other. That's like really appreciable. But in that, the problem is again some which is inbuilt in the university culture. Even the top institutes, like for example, like I have certain institutes which were outstanding statistics and mathematics programs and also economics programs. But you would hardly find the economics graduate student picking up the courage to go and sit in the mathematics courses or the statistics courses in those institutes. Not that they stopped us, right? Like you're free to go. Indian Institute of Science is probably, to my mind, the only exception in at least in the 80s. I don't know how it is now. Like where you were encouraged to go anywhere to anywhere, whichever department you can go to. You went and heard signal selection theory from evolutionary biologists in ecological sciences department. You could go anywhere, right? That kind of what should I say, a mental makeup. I think that is like all missing in our universities. Even though we have these multidisciplinary universities, which are very good departments, and potentially one could go across the departments and cross-register and so on and so forth. But for some weird reason, I don't know whether it is cultural or too much of this kind of silos in our mind, like we do not take those opportunities, right? So far, at least we didn't do. But this particular policy now is trying to nudge us towards that, towards breaking those kind of boundaries. So I don't know where, like, I find that objective very attractive. Having been through this kind of an eclectic environment in the Institute of Science, and later in Germany and other bigger universities, I'm kind of hoping, myself, I was involved in philosophy and economics programs and also non-economics programs, developing them in this country. I'm kind of hoping that we will have more such stories coming out of this policy push, which the government is undertaking now. Let me stop here and come back.
Very well articulated, sir. Can I request Dr. Sripad Karmalkar, sir? Can please speak your mind on this?
Okay, can I just share some slides?
Yeah, please.
That make it easy for me.
Yeah.
Nilesh, have you shared sharing rights with him?
Yes, sir, it's given.
Okay, perfect.
Are you able to see the slides?
Yes, sir. Please go ahead.
Yeah, so thank you for inviting me to this panel discussion. I've heard my two esteemed colleagues speak about their perception of the national education policy. So let me put my thoughts in brief. I will use these slides to make the points. I'm not able to find a pointer. Okay, it's fine. So let me take the first thing. It's not the gun, but the hands behind the gun which win the war. It's not the hands behind the gun, but the spirit in man which wins the war. In a similar vein, Indian research will make impact only when the creation of more facilities and funds is accompanied by an awakening of the research spirit in the researchers utilizing these. Infusing the research spirit is the task of educational institutions. I find, after reading the National Education Policy, that it seems to have recognized this fact. And it is trying to lay emphasis on building the research spirit right from school education. I think this is very important. Let me give you some pointers, specific pointers, which makes me feel that they are indeed trying to give this particular flavor. If I am asked to define what is research in very practical terms, I would say research is the work done to find a question and its answer and publish these findings. So there are four important things here: the work that is done and finding a question. There is a lot of difference between course-based education or course-based learning and research. The National Education Policy seems to have recognized this very clearly, and this is heartening. See, questioning, originality, and truthfulness are central to research. Ability to question. We often find that we teachers evaluate our students more by how they answer our questions. In fact, our performance indicators for student learning is all on answers to our questions said to them. Very rarely teachers use the kind of questions students have raised to assess them. So the National Education Policy seems to give importance to this particular aspect. That is, teachers should encourage students to question. This is one important thing that I find in the National Education Policy. Further, it recognizes that research needs higher level thinking, communication, and experimental and management skills. So therefore, there is an emphasis on developing higher level thinking rather than covering large amount of syllabus. The emphasis is on developing a higher level thinking. Okay. And another important thing related to research is the ethics. Plagiarism. I find, for instance, school students are asked to make PowerPoint preparations, presentations. And they simply do cut paste and then make presentations. So much so that I have seen even after coming to IIT, students, when they are asked to make presentation, they do cut paste. They don't know that this is plagiarism. I cannot simply do cut paste. Even if it is a diagram, I have to draw on my own. So this awareness about plagiarism, I find that National Education Policy makes it important to instill in students what is right about ethics. In fact, to quote the National Education Policy, doing what's right, students will be taught at a young age the importance of doing what's right and will be given logical framework for making ethical decisions. This is very heartening. And particularly plagiarism is indicated there, okay, as something that the student should be aware of. Now, in research, as we have said, publishing is also important. This means communication is very important. So ability to write, ability to speak. So emphasis is on these. I find National Education Policy seems to have mentioned this also. Now, research on learning shows that 5 factors affect learning. I am head of the Teaching Learning Center, and I'm also associate editor of IEEE Transactions on Education. So I'm familiar with the research that has happened in the field of education. So the 5 factors which affect learning are genes, early childhood environment, teachers, classmates, and resources. The National Education Policy seems to have touched upon at least the 4 of this: early childhood environment, teachers, classmates, and resources. Okay. So for example, I find a specific mention about early childhood care and education from the age of 3. I think this is something very important because research has shown that much of the brain development happens in the first 6 years of a person. Now, that being the case, unless that age is addressed, the development in that age is addressed, we cannot think of filing more patents at a later age and developing high level research skills. Now, apart from the early childhood environment, teachers, there are clear guidelines and policy statements about teaching. No nation can rise above the level of its teachers. So let me mention some specific things which attracted my attention in the National Education Policy. I'm quoting from the National Education Policy. All fresh PhD entrants will be required to take credit-based courses in teaching, education, pedagogy, and writing related to their chosen PhD subject. Exposure to pedagogical practices, designing curriculum, credible evaluation systems, communication, and so on will be ensured, since many research scholars will go on to become faculty or public representatives, communicators in their chosen disciplines. PhD students will also have a minimum number of hours of actual teaching experience gathered through teaching assistantships and other means. PhD programs at universities around the country will be reoriented for this purpose. I think this is a significant statement. Some practical issues also seem to have been addressed. At least the intention has been expressed, right? Implementation is going to happen in the coming years. The harmful practice of excessive teacher transfers will be halted so that students have continuity in their role models and educational environments. I find this specific statement there. Another interesting thing I find in national education policy is about multilingualism. See, I am myself a person, my mother tongue is Marathi. I never lived in Maharashtra. First, my education was in Bengali medium in Kolkata for first 4 standards, then in Hindi medium in Indore, and then our family moved to Hyderabad, where though I was not educated in Telugu, all my friends were Telugu, so I picked up Telugu, and then I am in Chennai. So for last more than 35 years, so I have picked up Tamil. So I have really experienced the benefit of multilingualism. And the national education policy seems to be making a statement, and I find it very interesting. I'm quoting from the national education policy. Multilingualism has great cognitive benefits to young students. High quality bilingual textbooks and teaching learning materials for science and mathematics will be developed and provided. Fun project activity on languages of India, sometime in grades 6 to 8, such as under the Ek Bharat Shrestha Bharat initiative. Okay. So this promotion of multilingualism, I find, is also very significant, distinct characteristic of this particular education policy. Finally, it seems to talk about Indic consciousness in addition to talking about constitution. Sometimes I have seen in the past, people, particularly the educated ones, have been shy of emphasizing the Indic consciousness and so on. And this is because of our picking up of ideas and concepts from the West. For instance, the word nationalism in the West doesn't have a very positive experience. Usually, whenever we use the term nationalism, it is linked to Nazism and so on, the supremacist feeling of one community or group of people, right, over others and things like that. But our own Indic experience is very different. If you take our own civilizational ideas, we have said ekam satu pra bahuda vadanti. We agree that let noble thoughts come to us from all directions and so on. So our emphasis on Indic consciousness, I find this is something unique feature in addition to constitution. The unique feature of national education policy. This is important because unless a person is motivated to do research, higher level thinking and so on, right? The motivation is very important. Motivation comes from various sources. And this consciousness about belonging to a country is a very important source of motivation. If it is in balanced terms, it is a very, very positive thing. In my opinion, I have moved around in the globe. I have taught in different places. I have interacted. I find that the consciousness about our own culture and civilization is a little diminished compared to our actual achievements, cultural and civilizational achievements among Indians. So I feel it is a good thing that national education policy is trying to emphasize this aspect of Indian consciousness and culture. So I think with these points, I will stop.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. I remember the quote of Swami Vivekananda, the man making and character building is the motto of education, and expansion of the heart and expansion of mind is the purpose of education. And that is what really incorporated in this national education policy. Thank you, sir. And this is what Ekam Sat Vipra Bahuda Vadanti, that is what we are practicing at our university, at MIT World Peace University. Thank you, sir. We would like to go to the few questions which I would like to ask and would like to deliberate on it. But before that, I would like to just put my concerns. So what is exactly in this? So what are those key factors playing a major role in defining R&D culture in India? So according to me and according to the study which is said, the curriculum and content, whenever it is a research and development, the curriculum and content has to play a very important role. I will be speaking very broadly, the teacher's availability. The teachers training program, most of the time at the engineering level, we don't have a structure like a B.Ed or M.Ed. The teacher's availability, the teacher's mindset to be defined from the research and development perspective, the teacher skilling, which is a very, very important part, and the technology at scale. I remember, because we are talking of these technologies, we are talking of education 4.0. These are the 8 technologies which will define the education of the future and future of the education. These are all A, B, C, D, artificial intelligence, blockchain, C, cyber security, cloud, D, data sciences, and AR, AI. The most important dominating is augmented reality, virtual reality, mixed reality, extended reality, robotics, Internet of Things. So these are the technologies, and whether we are giving a sufficient training to the teachers, the technology at scale, and to the students. And the most importantly is the evaluation infrastructure. So many times I feel if you would like to bring that culture, R&D culture at the university level or at the institution level, can the university starts with the inverted triangle program? Can we start with the postdoc first, then PhD, then masters, and then perhaps at every level, the research and patent is a compulsory part of it. I was coming to the point, and my question is, the most of the universities, including IITs and IIMs, apart from the IIT Madras, they are struggling in getting world ranking. And the foreign university, those who ranked amongst the top 100 by QS ranking or the Times Higher Education ranking or Shanghai ranking, can able to set up the campus in India. So whether are we ready for this internationalization, particularly this R&D culture, and the floor is open. I would like to request Dr. Anand Joshi sir to please make your comment on this internationalization of the education from the R&D perspective.
Thank you, sir. So I think I tried to cover the issues that you have raised, some 2-3 issues that interestingly you have raised. First, I will start with the content development and curriculum, which refers to the faculty and this one. So from the Indian institutional point of view, the UGC also said out of 40 hours, working hours in a week, it is earmarked 1/3 of working hours should be earmarked for classroom teaching, 1/3 for research, 1/3 for academic administration. These are the 3 categories that they have made. And fortunately or unfortunately, the private institutions are pumping the faculty with more focus on teaching and learning centric than teaching research centric. So that is how there is a sharp dealing in academic research and teaching. And it is a wrong notion on the part of institutions that research happens only at the PG teaching and PG students. No, the real sense of research should happen in the undergraduate education itself. And that is the whole issue of research in a institutional perspective. Secondly, with reference to the global ranking in field of research, this one, unfortunately in India, the research till NIRF came into existence, we focused only on a typical research paper publications. And once the faculty publishes that particular paper, even he will not read it. It will only go to his CV, number one. Secondly, he never takes that his research output to his own classroom. Then how can he is going to have a dissemination of his own research output to the next generation of students and community? In fact, I should say here that after 3 years, my case study was published in a Harvard Public School Publishing, and also Richard Ivey in another this one. The Harvard took 3 years, and after 3 years, once they are accepted for publishing, they asked me the teaching notes. 6 months they reviewed the teaching notes submitted by me. How this particular case can be taken to the classroom teaching? And believe me, sir, today, average per year, around 30 to 40 downloads happens, but the people do they're all paid case studies, and the people download that around 30 to 40. And that is the requirement. So, and I would like to pose a question here. Even the best of the institutions in India, we are not based in case-based teaching. We are conceptual theory-based teaching. I think the mindset of a teacher should change from the subjective teaching to application-oriented teaching. Yes, subjective fundamental teaching is required. So, but ultimately, in fact, again, it's they say around 1/3 on the conceptual understanding, 1/3 on application, and 1/3 is on case-based and decision-making teaching. I think that is the whole issue. And in this particular perspective, we fail to get into the understanding in the national ranking. And the second issue that which I would like to talk about it is, in terms of research that you said, sir, 2017 CII report says, as per 16-17 academic financial year, 74% of patent files in India are from industrial R&D and not from academic institutions. So the academic institutions and also the scientific institutions like DRDO, DST, and all the scientific institutions, centrally funded scientific institutions, it was only 26%. So the industrial R&D was 74%. My question here is, when a typical rural-based engineering college, a student with a local medium understanding, after his graduation, he comes to Bangalore, joins an MNC of R&D, because in Bangalore is the hub of R&D. In Bangalore has got 650 R&D centers across the verticals and disciplines. As that particular student, next 3 to 5 years down the line, he starts filing patents in India. In India, I'm talking. So what made the impetus? An average boy is able to file next 3 to 5 years down the line of his graduation of engineering. He starts filing an patents. Then why not the academic institutions, the professors with standing of 30 years or 40 years? It is all about the culture that we are talking about it. And the current NEP is going to have the focus on that. And last, with reference to the formation of the ecosystem, see, it is all about the infrastructure. Infrastructure, I mean, whether that technology leadership has overtaken in research also. That's why when we talk about an R&D culture, we see the R&D culture with 4 dimensions. The one is technology dimension, one behavioral dimension, commercial dimension, and scientific dimension. Research is not just a scientific innovation. Whether that scientific innovation is getting converted into a product or a process, or it is for a social cause, is the first issue. Second, the behavioral dimension, the scientific community, whether they are able to they have better social perspective in their innovations. Ultimately, we're all part of the society, the products of the society. That's the behavioral dimension that I'm talking. And the third one is with reference to the commercial dimension. It's ultimately it is purposes. The fourth one is technology. I think the word is going so fast. Today, the Indian community are extremely good in mind and matrix, because since school education, we are extremely good in mathematical modeling and also analytics. And that is how we are able to make the leadership and technology. I think the research culture should also inculcate a certain capsule on technology dimension. I think to summarize, all these three parameters bring a better research culture in the years to come.
I fully agree and support, sir, that research culture, that research environment has to be imbibed, cultivated into the organization, into the institution, and that research, innovation, incubation has to be the pulse of that organization. Very true. And you rightly said this multidisciplinary approach. In the beginning also I said it's just not engineering and science. We need to understand the innovations in kitchen. So, and best research in the world has occurred in multidisciplinary university settings. That is the benchmark, sir. That is the benchline. Over to you, Dr. Babu, sir, your views on the internationalization of the education and how this research and development culture can be created.
Yeah, I think the last point also, maybe I'll the last one you mentioned, the interdisciplinary focus. This is easier said than done. Often, like you find it for example, take law and economics, for example. If I'm in a law school, then first of all, I should be open to other social sciences, including economics, and I should be open to economic analysis of law. And I should understand why it is important for us to do the economic analysis of law and so on and so forth. And similarly, as an economist, I also should be open to other institutional structures. Unless that kind of openness is there on both sides, you cannot create these kind of interdisciplinary programs. Okay. So now, supposing you have all that, if you are able to overcome these kind of institutional or what should I say, the subject egos and so on and so forth, and if you are able to come out of that, then you can create these kind of successful interdisciplinary programs. And it's the same is true for other engineering and science disciplines as well, right? You can always see this kind of a sense in even in our top science institutes, science and engineering institutes. Some sort of a dichotomy between science and engineering, and also between fundamental science and applied science. You would always find those kind of tensions. And anyway, we have all lived to kind of overcome those kind of things and try and do better. In terms of internationalizing the things, here, I just want to alert all of us that if I want to go for an international collaboration with external partner, the first thing which they would ask is what's on the table, right? So what's on the table for me? Suppose okay, at some point, we had this funny policy that Indian universities or the Indian institutions would be encouraged to sign these kind of collaborative contracts with those in the Shanghai top 50 or whatever. If I am a Shanghai top 50, won't I turn back and ask what's your rank, right? So why would they come and sign a contract with you, right? So here I think one has to be really pragmatic, right? So you should see who's compatible with you, start small, and then maybe go towards your final goal. If I want to sign a contract with MIT or Harvard, I need to start somewhere and I need to establish myself first. And then I would be able to answer that question, what is on the table for me? I can say that, look, you have all this. And it is the same thing about attracting students from outside as well. If I want international students to come to India, which I think NEP is putting a lot of emphasis on, increasing that particular number, I need to kind of be at the frontier, teach at that level, infrastructure, the physical, in not only the physical infrastructure, but I should also say here that often we Indian students tend to kind of have this kind of a bit of a complex when we see these students from Europe or elsewhere, that how we would square up. But in the end, when you put them in a graduate class, like, I've seen the top German students getting complex with the way the Indian masters or first year master students perform or undergrads perform. In fact, like, in our top schools, the undergrads, their quality is like way too good. Like, I've seen cases where these international students who came to take courses going through a lot of psychological problems because suddenly a top student from there is getting much lower grade here. Something which Indian students are scared about going outside. So we can also encourage our own students to go out, but for that, like, we need to invest again in creating this semester abroad and all those kind of programs. We need to invest. We need to develop those ties, and it's a long drawn process. That's another thing which we need to remember. To establish this kind of reputation, you need to work at it for years, maybe for decades. If you work, you will kind of be able to create that kind of a reputation and also strong ties. And once you have it, then it is a lot easier to build on that. Let me stop there on this world ranking and so on and so forth.
Thank you, sir. While summing up this and taking the thread from Dr. Joshi, sir, the patents crucial for India to bridge the technology gap with US and China. Let me focus on technology first. And he rightly pointed out, here is the statistics. So the patents filed in India during 2018-19 by the Qualcomm was highest, followed by Samsung, Huawei, Ericsson, and Oppo. They are filing the patents. I mean, I'm connecting it to the R&D. And as far as the academia is concerned, the total patents filed by the IITs combined, they are 557, followed by Chandigarh University 336, from TCS, that is 239, and Bharat Heavy Electricals close to 173. You rightly pointed out about the rural education, rural-based institutions, and the major emphasis is on to the R&D infrastructure and that R&D environment. Over to you, Dr. Karmalkar, sir. A lot of things R&D happening at IIT Madras.
So, yes, I have heard others. I would like to put there a word of caution. Let me tell you my experience. So for instance, I have filed 3 patents, and this was just after I joined as a young faculty, at which point I wanted to gain experience in publication, filing patents and all that. During PhD, I already had experience of writing papers in international top journals and so on. So I said, okay, let's go through this patent, because I spent 2 years on leave from IIT to develop a technology to really understand what is the practical issues related in technology development. So my area of expertise is semiconductor devices. I spent 2 full years, okay, just after my PhD on loss of pay leave. After my experience, IIT has introduced with pay leave for entrepreneurship. I am the first person to have used leave for entrepreneurship, a loss of pay leave. Okay, now I'll tell you why I'm quoting this. So after I filed patents, my area is semiconductor devices. I developed some process for making high quality diodes. And then I found that, people are not aware of it and things like that in India. Later on, I realized actually there is hardly any industry in India which will actually be using that process. Okay, because the semiconductor fabrication scenario was not developed that much at that time. This is what I came to know. The level of teaching in IIT is very high about technology and so on. But the actual environment outside within the country, that is not so developed. So this gap, I came to know, I experienced this gap only when I actually went out on leave to make processes and so on. So what happened is, later on I realized if really I have to, the patent to be useful, because after all, what is a patent as different from a publication? That if somebody is using that particular idea, then that person has to pay you for it because you want to establish your ownership in monetary terms. But in India, even if you file a patent, in my area, I'm saying, so many of this nobody may use. So actually the patent is there, but it is not of practical utility. So if I have to file a patent, then I must file a patent in US or international patent. Now the cost of that is so high that unless I ensure that someone in that country is going to use my process, right, which I'm filing, that cost is exorbitantly high. That is what I found. So these were some of the reasons why I didn't file a patent in the US, even though some people in the US asked me, have you filed? Because some of my papers I published. So on published papers, people asked, because they are practical oriented and process related, have you filed a US patent? Then I said, no, right? So these are some of the practical issues related to patents. In certain areas, there may be reasons why people are not filing. So another point about filing patents is, there I came across very good researchers in my younger days. Now things are changing, who said, no, I don't want to file a patent and claim this thing. I want my things to be freely available to people. So there is this kind of ideas also, which are there among people who are capable, that, I don't want to file a patent, claim royalty for what I have done. I want it to be freely available. That is one point I want to point out about filing of patents. The other thing is, I find there is a certain difficulty in a lot of preoccupation with this ranking, this number. For instance, I have seen in trying to promote research culture, many institutions are asking their faculty, I'm talking about outside IIT, to publish papers, okay? Because they must show research potential. Now what happens is, so the goal becomes, you identify journals with a certain impact factor, and you try to publish certain number of papers. So X papers in journals of impact factor higher than X. That becomes, and they think that is research. What is the consequence of that? So I sit in faculty selection meetings of so many institutions, NITs, IITs, and so on. I find that as compared to 30 years ago, today, the resumes of people contain much larger number of publications, but their quality doesn't show significant improvement when you have a face-to-face interview. Even National Education Policy has clearly said that face-to-face interviews and so on will be used for selection of faculty and teaching and so on. So this is the part that I think there is a small issue here, that too much focus on numbers, people lose sight of the quality. People lose sight of the quality. I have done more than around 50 sessions on introduction to research for different people all over the country on innovation, okay, where I talk about what are the essentials of research, what is the goal of research and all that. Then many of the people who have done their PhD say, oh, we didn't know that is the goal of research. Because what is happening is, the goal as set in the national policy may be high, but people who are implementing those ideas don't have a loftier vision. They have a very highly practical outlook. Okay, make it into numbers and so on. Take the concept of learning outcome. Okay, it's a very important concept in pedagogy. All faculty members should describe their courses in terms of learning outcomes. What is the idea in basic learning outcomes? That is to ensure that those outcomes are achieved actually during the learning, during the teaching by the students. But many times what happens is, the quality of learning doesn't change. The kind of teaching doesn't change. Only on paper, the outcome, instead of the syllabus, the thing will be presented in terms of learning outcome. So I feel we have to pay attention to this quality aspect. This is very important. I feel if you want to promote research, we want to promote good learning, we want to develop faculty, this aspect of quality should be given importance, and this should be reflected in our method of evaluation. For example, I am teaching learning center head, and I do programs for training faculty. Many faculty, what they have said is, in their institution, the rating given by the student to the teacher is given very high importance and is taken as an index of quality of learning in the student. And they complain that, see, you are telling so many ideas, set good question papers, do like this, do like that. If I do all these things, the student will be unhappy. He will give me a low rating. So, since the rating is important, and other people, by being lax and so on, right, are getting a higher rating. So I feel there should be better awareness everywhere about the ideal criteria for quality in research and teaching. Ideal criteria. We should not reduce it to some few numbers.
Correct.
This is very, very important, I find. This qualitative aspect. So I feel, for example, if you want to improve teaching quality, make people aware of teacher portfolio concept. Let us not tell the people that whatever rating student gives you, that is your intent. So what is the teacher portfolio concept? If you want to tell your performance as a teacher, you give the following documents. What are the question papers you have set for your students? What marks students have got on those question papers? Then you can give this rating given by the student. You must tell policy. What is your policy, right? I mean, attendance policy. Do you insist that students should attend classes? What do you think about this? So on. So these things, documents together, give you an idea of your teaching quality, not that one number. Similarly, if you talk about research, then the student people should be told that what is the goal of research. You must have good writing skills. Now, no effort is being done to improve communication skills and improve writing skills. We are simply telling, if you publish papers which are in journals more than certain impact factor, then you will get promotion. Result is people will resort to plagiarism. Why? Because I don't have ability to write, I don't have ability to communicate, but I have to show numbers. I can show numbers by doing plagiarism. So how to avoid plagiarism? So many times people have asked, sir, I want to know how to use the plagiarism software so that it shows. So again, it is going to numbers. So I think stop there. I will say emphasis on quality and awareness among people about what constitutes quality of research and what constitutes quality of teaching. This is very important. If you do this for some amount of time, thereafter the ranking will acquire importance. Otherwise, without this development, qualitative development, just trying to go after numbers, I am not very sure whether it will really improve the quality. So what will happen is, you find that some institution is very high in ranking framework. You spend 3 months in that institution, then you feel, how my experience is like this, but the rank is so high. So this direct experience of students, of teachers, of research, when you move around with people, should correlate to the rank.
Very true, sir. Very true. And I said in the beginning also, the quality is first engineer and then it has to be inspected. That is what the JRD Tata is saying.
Yeah.
So thank you, sir. My next question, I would like to have your attention on the topic, that is how we can build that infrastructure, R&D infrastructure, because this ADP is majorly focusing on providing skills through the education, through the R&D infrastructure, and how that can be improved. I remember our Honorable Prime Minister again said we need 3S for the skill development program when he came out with the NSDC, National Skill Development Corporation. He said we need skill at the rate scale, at the rate speed. So the more than 52 sector skill councils and the R&D involved into it, how we can skilling, upskilling, reskilling, those many more things he discussed. But before I move on to the questions, I would like to just see my view, particularly how that development of research culture as far as the skill development is concerned, and then how we can develop that R&D infrastructure. So you will be agree with me, we have to have in our education system as the selection of the few faculties as a research professor, which is majorly missing. I'm talking in the benefit of all the participants today, particularly from the industries and from the institutions also. The sabbaticals for the staff is compulsory. That should be the policy. While developing this R&D infrastructure, we have to have the center of excellence in that is the center school approach, the tie-up with the sector skill council, and rightly said by all of you, the faculty cluster to promote the transdisciplinary research, which is missing. But fortunately, the UGC, our common friend Dr. Bhushan Patwardhan is basically focusing on this transdisciplinary research, and so much policies came out. Education 4.0, I said the education through the technology, education through the machines, and the intelligent education, that is what we can give. Under rural immersion of the students, so that they can understand what are those problems in the rural area. I said the village as a lab, that is what the few things, this is just how we can develop that R&D infrastructure and how we can provide the skills for this building up the infrastructure. Over to you, Dr. Joshi, sir, please.
Thank you, sir. In fact, uh, quite interestingly, just last month, World Economic Forum, they have published a research paper on, the title says, Skills Change, Nurture Human Capabilities. Skills change, comma, nurture human capabilities. This is the title of the research. What they say is the skills do change because the technology is changing so fast and the technology is penetrating into almost all the fields, right from healthcare to social science and humanities. So you cannot go on changing this training in the skill development and all these things. And I think the inference comes from the point to the fact that today, whatever the so-called tech leaders in India, they never studied computer science or electronics in their engineering graduation. They all studied electrical or mechanical or so on and so forth. So how they adopted to be a tech leaders today? It is on adopting the new knowledge, adopting the new skills on their own. It was not, they're not trained in the skills at all. So coming to the point, that kind of certain natural instincts of a person for development of a skill, and there are certain skills which needs to be nurtured, and they emphasize on two factors. One is social skills and emotional skills. I endorse the views of Dr. Babu with reference to the social science subjects. In fact, and also it is quoted there in one of the book, that current 38% of the CEOs of Fortune 500 companies are from the background of social science and humanities. They are not technologists, they are not management professionals, they are so. And when they ask the company's managements about the choosing someone from a social science and humanities background, and social science, I mean, not just economics, they include psychology, sociology, anthropology, history, political science, public administration, and language skills, so on and so forth. And the reply that they got, why they preferred it is the people who study social science are good in social skills and behavioral skills. When you are able to manage people, you can manage anything in the world. So that is a concept of nurturing human capabilities. So the skills can change, but definitely nurturing human capabilities remains the same as long as it exists in the other. Now, number two, with reference to the coming back to the educational institution itself, today Indian higher education is 44 billion industry. I use the word, sorry to use that word. We are not supposed to use education as an industry in India still because we still are under the social sectors of our economy. So, but it is a 44. I am excluding edutech companies. It is purely educational institutions. I am talking about the 44 billion. And is it not a human enterprise?
Yeah.
When we talk about the human enterprise, the whatever you talk about the management concepts of planning, strategy, innovation, delivery, directing, leadership, only the question is, it is not the surplus that we talk here. It's not a profit that we talk about. Ultimately, we can talk about the developmental agenda for the education. I think that ecosystem of developing an idea into an education, and whether that idea gets converted into research, and research converted into innovation, innovation gets converted into a product or a service. Somewhere down the line, the link gets delinked. So obviously, some things will be on paper, something will be on research, something will be on just ideation, something will kept it in this one. And by the time it comes to the product planning, product development, and product market, and it reaches the market dynamics, I think it gets delinked. I think that is how we should try to develop the linkages with industry and the academic institutions. I think I have made it.
Yeah. You rightly said, sir, the building the R&D, innovation, incubation ecosystem for new and self-reliant India, and that is also what the theme of this conference. Over to you, Dr. Babu, sir, about the skilling and the infrastructure development.
Yeah,
infrastructure?
yeah. On the practical side, I think like see like all these. Okay, one fundamental thing which one of my co-panelists touched upon was this dichotomy between like kind of basic research and applied research in all of our academic institutions. So that I think will be there. Like the core will I guess still will be basic research. So where just your own passion and what you like, what you think is important from your own subject, focus. So that would still be dominant. Okay, but on the other hand, when you want to kind of develop this kind of applied side in terms of patents and also like applicable research and things like that, where you want to develop linkages with the industry, well, it will help in many ways. One is, of course, it will generate, at some point, we also need to think about sustainability of all our programs. So, which means raising your own, funding and becoming fairly independent of other outside support, building your corpus and so on and so forth. You can do it with industry linkages, but for that, like you also need to give them something. One idea which we explored in the non-economics context was to kind of develop this notion of what we call associate partners. Okay, so we have the key academic institutions as the main partners, but we also have these associate partners where various law firms and the big companies and all of them can become associate partners if they find this particular program, the doctoral program or master's program in law and economics attractive. So they what they do is as associate partners, they come and interact with our students. They also give internships and also sometimes research topics. Okay, the lot of applicable research topics, case laws, and so on and so forth, which is like a lot more easier, as I said, in law and economics. The law firms would take a lot of interest in doing that. But similar kind of a things you can explore in other areas, right? Like in other kind of disciplines. Certainly in computer science, electrical engineering, and all of that. I think it should easily be possible where you give them, you give them a role to play. You invite them at least once or twice in a year to interact with your faculty and your graduating students and so on and so forth. You take their feedback, so that kind of helps you to also stay grounded. Like what is needed immediately, what is the policy relevance as of now, like in terms of practical applications and so on and so forth. There is a gap and so on and so forth. As an academic institution, as a faculty in an academic institution, I may or may not be interested in finding that out directly. But this kind of institutional connections with the industry would help us to stay grounded, uh, to keep an eye on what is applicable, what is immediately needed, and what is of relevance, and so on and so forth. And that could also guide our, in some sense, our syllabi in some of the courses. Not all courses we would be able to do that, but at least in some of the optional courses, you might be able to kind of take these inputs and improve. That's a kind of a practical way in which you could explore these linkages with industry, particularly in terms of applied research. I'll stop here.
Yeah, yeah. Rightly said, sir. This is about the R&D infrastructure building up and the skill development program. You rightly said that we have to have these industry linkages, the creating the online linkages with the various laboratories, and we need to form that chain, the ecosystem, the sharing of the resources, the collaborative research, the twinning program, and all those things. Over to you, Dr. Karmalkar, sir, please.
Yeah, I will make some short points because others have already made. So what I find is, because I also had linkages with industry and I had to, work very hard for it. Again, I must say that these experiences can be specific to the areas in which you work. For example, a person in mechanical engineering may have a different experience of industry institute academia interaction than a person like me who is in the high tech area like semiconductor devices. Okay, so we have to be aware of these differences. We can't talk in general terms. I would like to emphasize this point a little. For instance, if you see the technologies, technology scenario, you can divide technologies into 3 levels. One is software technology. Next is hardware systems level technologies. And third is components, materials level technology. Let me give examples of each of these. So if you take India, for example, doing very well in software development. Here, your ability in mathematics, logical reasoning, all that, becomes important. We have in abundant measure. We are doing reasonably well in systems level technology. We are able to send satellites. Okay, we are able to build supercomputers. These are system building areas. However, in the components level, we are weak. For example, sewing needle also we make using imported technology. A semiconductor device, in our satellite, whatever semiconductor device is used, you import and you make a system, you are good at that. But if you want to make that device itself in India, there are difficulties. So I am working at that level and I find this clear difference. Unfortunately, what I find is this awareness is not there that much among people, technologists and so on. They try to paint the entire scenario of technology with one brush and they will talk about some experience in systems level technology and then say that why not we do the same thing at materials level. So unfortunately, each of these levels are different. This is one important point. Awareness about the differences in levels of technology is one important point I think it is there. Second, then this I found misconceptions on either side, industry as well as in academia. Okay, so again, it might be more because of my area. I am always emphasizing that fact because different areas, the experience can be different. So here the experience can be, no. See, I don't want to go and talk about that level. If the scenario in country has not developed, that's not my fault. Okay, I'm a faculty in an institution. I will teach the latest developments to my students because that is intellectually challenging to me. I don't find intellectually challenging telling something, right? That is of this thing around me. This is the perception in the faculty. What a perception in the industry. On my own, I started 25 years ago building rapport with the industry. So I went to the industry. I said, I will give you a small talk to the CEO of that company. What I can do for you. So first, people told me, look, don't get disappointed because CEO doesn't have a good opinion of academic institutions. Because he feels these people talk about things which are theory, like another person has said. And not only that, they are not interested in industry. I said, doesn't matter. I want only challenging thing and I want to break the ice. So I went and met the CEO. He asked me, how much time are you going to take? I am very busy. I said, I need only 15 minutes of your time. And in 15 minutes, then I told him, what we can do as a faculty for you. In the beginning, he always said, Professor, we know you are all good at giving lectures, but I want some results. See, this is a misconception. The misconception is faculty are only talking and the real, doing things and implementing things happens in industry. Actually, that is not really true. Okay, because of the lack of linkage and awareness on either side, how the complementary strengths can be integrated, this is happening. So the faculty should be aware of what are the goals of an industry and talk in that language. This is important. I cannot say that I will only read some books which are at a very high advanced level and I will teach those things because they're intellectually challenging. I don't have any eye on the utility. And industry cannot say that faculty are not connected. Point number two, industry should also know that how faculties are evaluated for promotions in IIT, their institutions. For example, if I develop a technology for an industry, the industry should not say, look, don't ask me how many devices I have made out of this technology. For me, that is important. That is the only thing if I quote in my institution, people will appreciate that I have done something significant. Okay. See, this awareness of how each of these two systems work. What is important for them for growth there in an industry, for an individual? What is important for growth of an individual in an academic institution? See, these practical issues also should be understood on both sides. Yeah. So I think this interaction should be really at a level, at this level, where we talk in such practical levels. If that happens, I am very sure that good industry faculty interaction can happen and things can be produced. Yeah.
True. Sir, we are about to finish this. Before I request the Praveen Patil sir to come in, I would like to just conclude in a short sayings this industry institute and in the R&D culture, whether this ADP and R&D culture will shape the future of India. Yes, because we need to do some learnings. We also need to pass on some teachings to the students. Most importantly, this teaching, whether the institute, industry, this teaching, research, collaboration, and partnership at both the levels, we should look at the international research and teaching collaborations in a more planned way, because we spoke about the rankings and the major emphasis on the mutual beneficial bilateral engagements from both the sides to enhance the quality of teaching, which you rightly said, the quality of teaching and learning. And for this, we have to have to promote the collaborative research, to have the multicultural academic engagements, and the most importantly, faculty to faculty connect. What I learned is that we will, for this building up the R&D culture, R&D infrastructure, we should give a sufficient space to the students, and we must tell them, don't be afraid to fail, celebrate the failure. And that is what the Israel, a country like Israel, they are calling it as a badge of honor. And this is what all because of the society to the knowledge based society, that is what the important. And we want that our students should be job giver and no job seeker, and that is what the Atmanirbhar Bharat, because unemployment sector is growing, and we want to be students to be the part of solution. That's why this Smart India hackathon and so many things we came out just to cultivate the R&D culture. And we want the student should be the part of the solutions and not for the problems. Just last sentence, what Martin Luther King has said, that the function of education is to teach one. The function of education to teach one to think intensively and to think critically. Intelligence plus character, and that is the goal of true education. That is what Martin Luther King has said. Thank you. I thank everyone for this wonderful discussion and the immense participation. And as I said, it's 100+ years of experience which you brought onto the table. Over to you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Milind Pande, sir. It was a very encouraging, engaging, and interesting dialogue that we had on will NEP 2020 be helpful in promoting research and development culture in the country. And while much has been spoken about this topic, I think today's discussion brought out some very interesting points. I want to share with you, friends. This is Indcon is an event which is going across different cities, different 11 cities in the country. We've already covered Pune, Mumbai, Delhi. Now we're doing Bangalore and Chennai, and we'll be going to the east, and then again a few cities in the central and the western part of the country. The whole idea is to take a point of view of the industry and academia, and kind of sum it up into a white paper by each region, and then create a white paper for the country to be then forwarded to the Honorable Prime Minister's Office, Ministry of HRD, Ministry of Industry, to see how we can actually create an ecosystem of research and development. Research and development does not happen by investing in a technology business incubator or some kind of investment that is made by the government. And I think it's a culture which needs to instill. And yesterday's discussion came up. It came up very, very aptly that it needs to start from the very childhood. And I think in today's presentation also we saw that it needs to start from the grade 3 or the third year of the child is when we need to start. And so it's very collating, and that's a consistent feedback coming from all over the country. I think these inputs coming from intellectuals like you will help us in collating this. So I sincerely thank each one of you. Dr. P.G.Bapu, Director, Madras Institute of Development Science. Thank you very much, sir, for your participation and your time for this noble cause in nation building. Dr. Shreepad Karmalkar, Head of Teaching Learning Center, IIT Madras. Thank you very much, sir, for your presence and your time. Dr. Anand Joshi, Honorable Vice Chancellor, CMR University. Thank you very much, sir, for your active participation. So I want to respond to one of the things that Karmalkar sir mentioned about the industry and academia and their difference of opinion and their thinking about research. So platforms such as these Indcon are intended to bridge that gap. So for instance, today's panel had only academicians, but a lot of panels that we have through the session, 3-day session that we are doing across different cities, has a mix of academicians and industry, and they're trying to understand each other's point of view, and there is a lot of common area of research and work which we hope that at least this platform will, in its own way, begin. And if that happens, we would have done our little bit for the society, little bit for this nation, towards the core of our objective of Indcon this year, which is research and development. Thank you very much once again, everybody, for your time. And I would like to thank Dr. Milind Pande, our Pro Vice Chancellor, for very efficiently, for very engagingly, moderating this session. Thank you very much, sir. Thank you very much, CIAP team. Thank you very much, everybody, for contributing and making this a success. Thank you so much. Anuja, do you want to close?
Thank you very much, sir. So before, as you said rightly, like we are about to end the session, but just to add to Pandey sir's statement, I would just like to say something that I just recollected right now, that, never fear failure. And as Dr. Mashelkar said once in Bharatiya Chhatra Sansad, he mentioned that FAIL stands for first attempt in learning. So never fear failure. And, and it is so important for all of us to focus on research and development area. And as teachers, I felt like a student today, rather, jotting down all the important points that all the dignitaries were speaking about research. So thank you very much. And going ahead, the next session is scheduled post-lunch break at 2:30 p.m. on challenges in implementing high-quality R&D program in India. So till then, this is Anuja Palkar signing off. See you in the next session.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you all, sir.
Thank you, sir.
I just have one question.
Yes, sir.
Can I join the next session if I am interested in?
Yeah, of course,
Yes,
you can,
sir.
sir.
Yes, sir.
How do I join?
Link.
Oh, same link.
Using the same link.
Okay.